Chapter 4 is all about the revenue cycle. So in its simplest form, the revenue cycle is a direct exchange of finished goods or services for cash in a single transaction between a seller and a buyer. Now, what are our objectives for this chapter? First is to understand the fundamental tasks performed in the revenue cycle regardless of the technology used. Second, to be able to identify the functional departments involved in revenue cycle activities and trace the flow of revenue transactions through the organization. Third is to be able to specify the documents, journals, and accounts that provide audit trails, promote the maintenance of historical records, support internal decision-making, and sustain financial recording. Fourth is to understand the risks associated with the revenue cycle and recognize the controls that reduce those risks. Lastly is to be aware of the operational and control implications of technology used to automate and re-engineer the revenue cycle. So this is the overview of the revenue cycle. So we have here the revenue cycle is triggered by the sales order, followed by the credit or customer service, then the shipping, then the billing department or accounts receivable, and lastly the cash collection or receipts. And then once there is collection, it would go back again to sales order. So this is the summary of what the revenue cycle is about, and we will be talking deeper into each of the departments or each of the system or processes involved in the revenue cycle. So if you can see, or if you remember in the figure in the previous slide, you have the following departments involved. Now, how do we recognize the entries involved in the revenue cycle? So for instance, in the billing department, they prepare the journal voucher wherein they recognize the sales of they recognize the sale that happened or that occurred, and at the same time recognizing the accounts receivable. Now on the inventory control department, they are the ones who recognize the inventory that is credited. So of course there is sale, so na should na inventory, di ba, nga mawala, and also they recognize the cost of goods sold. While the cash receipts department is the one that recognizes the collection of payment by the customers. Now these are the following databases that you will encounter or you will use during the revenue cycle. So for the following master files, so we already know, or we've already discussed in our previous discussions, what are master files, transaction files, diba, or reference files. So you already know what are these. But in here, it's just specific to the revenue cycle itself. So for the master files that we will be using in the revenue cycle, we have the customer master file, wherein, of course, it contains the data on all about the data or information about the customer, like the billing address or the current credit limit of the customer, and so on. Next is we have the accounts receivable master file, where of course it contains all the accounts receivable transactions. We also have the merchandise inventory master file, which is the source of data for us to know the current inventory level of the organization. Now we also have the following transaction and open document files. We have the sales order transaction file, and which is an open sales order transaction file. So either way, so it is the file that starts the what do you call this, revenue cycle, diba? Ito sa first stage sales order. We also have the sales invoice transaction file, which triggers or which informs the customer about the bill that they are to pay. Next is the cash receipts transaction file, which is already made during the collection. And then we also have the following files involved. We have the shipping and price data reference file, credit reference file, which may not always be needed, salesperson file, which may be a master file. It depends on the kind of industry of the business. If it relies heavily on salesperson, or like there is a commission basis when it comes to their sales, so salesperson file can be a master file. We also have the sales history file, cash receipts history file, and the accounts receivable reports file. So let us now start with the first procedure in the revenue cycle, which is the sales order processing system. So you have here, as you can see on your screen, that is the data flow diagram of the sales order process. Now, the sales order process or the sales order procedure includes the tasks involved in receiving and processing a customer order, filling the order and shipping products to the customer, billing the customer at the proper time, and correctly accounting for the transaction. So we will discuss this system one by one. So first, let us start with the customer. So of course, si customer is make siya og customer order. Diba? So, once the customer orders, if the customer orders and once it is received by the organization or by the company, so kani, ano nito sa atong receive order. So, the sales process begins with the receipt of a customer order, which indicates the type and the quantity of the merchandise na iyahang paliton. So, at this point, the customer order is not in a standard format and may not be a physical document. So, there may be instances that the customer will just call beforehand, like ask the company, hello, is product A available at the moment? So you as a company is that you will also try to sit once you receive the customer order, so you have confirmations, and then is it okay if I will order this much product, and so on and so forth. So other orders, as I mentioned, or as the one I give example, is done by telephone, while others arrive by mail or by fax, or if they send a representative. So there are other ways, or there are different ways in which the company can receive the order. Now, when the customer is also a business entity, the order is often a copy of the customer's purchase order. Now, again, a purchase order is an expenditure cycle document, which we'll discuss in future chapters. Now, customer order, or if it is a business entity, another term used is purchase order. So, meaning the company, the business organization would like to purchase something from your company. Now, because the customer order is not the standard form, or is not really issued by your company or by your entity, of course, so it is, or the organization then would transcribe it or make it formal through the use or through having a formal sales order. So the sales order then, so ariha sa receiving is dili na magkamaog sales order. Now, the sales order captures vital information such as the customer's name, address, account number, the description of the items na paliton, diba, the quantities, and the unit price of all those items. So, all of those are included in the sales order. Now, at this point, financial information such as taxes, discounts, shipping charges are not yet included in the sales order. So, basically, ang nasa sales order is the basic information about the customer, diba? Basic relevant information about the customer and about the items that are being ordered. So, after creating the sales order, a copy of it is placed in the customer open file. Customer open file, which or customer open order file for future references. Now, the task of filling an order and getting the product to the customer may take days or even weeks. Now, during this period, customers may contact their suppliers to check the status of their orders. The customer record in the open order file is updated each time the status of the order changes, such as credit approval, if there are any back orders, or if there is already the shipment. Thus, the open order file enables customer service employees to respond promptly and accurately to customer service. So again, wala lang explicitly state diri or gi-include diri ang katong customer order file, but basically sa customer order file or customer open order file is diha nila makita kung ang katong data or unsay status sa mga unsay status sa order ni customer. So for instance, if si customer is mo follow up siya sa unsa na nahitabo sa iyang order, is si customer service is that he or she can just check on the customer open order file to see nga okay, imong order is na siya sa shipping, or imong order is kanang ready for pick up, and so on and so forth. So ina na siya mo na ang diri na mahitabo sa ini ka receive nimo og order. Now, before processing the order itself, or before as I mentioned, before you process the order, is that the customer's creditworthiness needs to be established first. So ari patahanap das receive order. So in order to establish that, is diri na ta sa next, which is the check credit. So here, a copy of the sales order padung ang ihatag nimo padung sa imong credit department. So there are instances or circumstances of the sale wherein there needs to be a specific degree of credit that is allowed. So for example, a new customer may undergo a full financial investigation to establish a line of credit. Now, once a credit limit is set, however, credit checking on subsequent sales may be limited to ensuring that the customer has a history of paying his or her bills and that the current sale does not exceed the pre-established limit. Now, the credit approval process is considered as an authorization control. Again, the credit approval process is considered as an authorization control and should be performed as a function separate from the sales activity. So, in the conceptual system, the receive order task sends the sales order na credit copy. Kay dili ra man na isa ang sales order, no? So, the credit copy is sent to the credit department for approval. Now, the returned kailangan approve sales order then triggers the continuation of the sales process by releasing sales order information to various departments. So, apila na diha ang kanang sa imong warehouse, imong accounting, and so on. So, again, why do you need to check the credit of the certain company? It is because when a certain business entity applies for credit, there are instances wherein, or this is a safety control for the company para ma-determine nila that the customer is really a good debtor, diba? If mabayad bagid siya on time, especially if the customer is dugay na nga customer, and then you see in previous histories of the customer is that he pays each order on time, diba? So meaning nindot siya credit score. So you as a company can trust the customer. Therefore, there are instances nga mas higher iyang credit limit. Now, there are mas higher yung credit limit because nga may man siya mobayad nga customer. So, masin unsa pa nakadako iyang utang, nara siya capacity to pay and pay it on time. Now, there are instances pod na imuhang credit limit is pwede siya mo set at a lower amount, especially if bago pa lang imong customer. So wala pa jud ka kabaw if diligent ba na siya mo bayad or if he pays full on time, di ba? Or na yung mga late, ana-ana. So it is a safety precaution to the organization. Now again, the approved sales order then triggers the next processes of the sales order. So, tagsa-tagsaonin na to. So, kaniha, gikan ta sa check credit, then nabalik na ato ang approved na sales order. Now, ari tauna sa ato ang pick codes. So, the receive order activity forwards the stock release document, also called the picking ticket, to the pick goods function in the warehouse. So, remember, sa imong sales order is, aside from the sales order, is magbuhat po na ang imong receiving department or receiving department nimo, or katong sa nag-receive og order og stock release na document, or another term for the stock release document is the picking ticket. So, unsa ang nasa picking ticket? This document identifies the items of inventory that must be located and picked from the warehouse shelves. It also provides formal authorization for warehouse personnel to release the specified items. So, again, kani ba si receive order na department is kabaw siya or makitaan ba sa sales order nimo kung pila ka book, di ba, ang items, pila ka units for that specific item. So iyaha lang is iyaharang ikuan dito ang details ra gyud about sa inventory. So kani product A kailangan na po ka buok, product B kailangan 20 ka buok, and so on and so forth. So mo na ang nasa imong picking ticket nya, moadto na siya sa imong warehouse. So kana, now after picking the stock mo siya kay, like for example, in my previous company, naaman sad money, naami aning picking ticket, wherein ang naaragyod dito is the customer name and then the inventory. So, ang mga sales personnel is tagsa-tagsaon ang nilang pangita, like pila ka boxes of this certain product ang gamiton. So, nana sila yung murag cart. Di siya, basta, di siya kanang cart nga para sa grocery ha. Dako siya nga magtulod-tulod nga adto nila ibutang ang mga stocks nga gi-order for that specific customer. So for example, si warehouse person A is assigned siya sa orders ni customer Z. So ana siya, so siya ang assign ato tanan. So mura siya mag-grocery sa warehouse. Murag inana ang thought ba. So siya ang manguha sa part sa warehouse kung katong naa sa imuhang picking ticket. So ana siya. Now, after picking the stock, the order is verified for accuracy and the goods and verified stock release document are sent to the ship goods task. So if the inventory levels are insufficient to fill the order, a warehouse employee adjusts the verified stock release to reflect the amount actually going to the customer. Then the employee prepares a back order record which stays on file until the inventories arrive from the supplier. Now, back order items are shipped before new sales are processed. Mintag back order is meaning mo na kanang mga nahutdan og stocks, di ba? So meaning na kay mga orders na wala pa nimo ma-serve, which is wala lang siya pakita gyud dire, pero if mag-pick ka goods, ang verified stock release is maadto siya sa shipping, di ba, sa shipping department, and then ang mahitabuan na is together with the picking o katong mga items o kay si shipping na ang bahala niya pa-ship ato. Now, at the same time, si ari sa warehouse, kung asa mag-pick o goods, is sila pod ang mag-update niya sa imuhang stock records. Kaya of course, sila man ang kahibaw kung pila na kabuok ang nakuha. Di ba? Sila man ang marag na custody ba sa imuhang inventory. So, once ma-verify na to nimo imong mga or na naka-verified stock release, ang imuhang product quantity sa imuhang stock records is ma-update pud siya. Now, the warehouse employee adjust the stock records to reflect the reduction in inventory. So, as I mentioned, now, these stock records are not the formal accounting records for controlling inventory assets. So, kani siya is, dili siya sa imuhang books, mo reflect ha kanimuhang stock records. So, mo ni siya ang murag personal or sa record lang ni siya sa warehousing, which then will be used para reconciling niya for another control. Now, assigning asset custody and accounting record-keeping responsibility to the warehouse clerk would violate a key principle of internal control, which is kato wala na siya segregation of duties.